I honestly never thought I'd be the guy posting here, but here we are. Me, 32M, and my wife, 30F, have been married for 6 years, together for almost 9. For most of that time, I genuinely believed we had a solid relationship. Not perfect, no relationship is, but stable, predictable, safe. We had routines, inside jokes, plans for the future. From the outside, we looked like one of those couples people assume will make it. But if I'm being real, the cracks didn't just appear overnight. I just ignored them. She's always had a sharp personality, like, brutally direct. At first, I thought it was confidence. Over time, it started feeling more like she just didn't care how her words landed. Arguments would escalate fast because she'd go from 0 to 100 in seconds, and somehow I'd always end up apologizing, even when I wasn't sure what I did wrong. And the lying. I didn't want to call it that back then. I told myself it was white lies or forgetfulness. Small things. Inconsistent stories about where she'd been, who she was with. Nothing huge, but enough that I'd sometimes get this weird gut feeling. You know that feeling when something doesn't add up, but you don't have proof, so you just push it down? Yeah. That. About 6 months ago, things started shifting more noticeably. She became distant. Like physically there but mentally somewhere else. Always on her phone, but suddenly protective of it. If I walked into the room, she'd tilt the screen away or lock it immediately. Late-night texting became normal. She started going out, with coworkers, more often, even though she used to complain about them constantly. I asked her about it once, just casually, and she snapped at me. Said I was being paranoid and controlling. That hit me harder than I expected, so I backed off. I didn't want to be that guy. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. Looking back now, I think part of me already knew something was off. I just wasn't ready to face what it could actually mean. And then something happened that made it impossible to ignore anymore. It was a Tuesday. She had just gotten out of the shower and left her phone on the kitchen counter. That alone wasn't weird, but what was weird is that she'd been acting like that phone was basically classified government property for weeks. Never left it unattended. Took it everywhere. Even to the bathroom. Except this time, she forgot. I wasn't planning to check it. I need to be clear about that. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I also won't pretend it came out of nowhere. My gut had been screaming at me for months. Then her phone lit up. A message preview popped up. No name saved, just a number. Last night was insane. Still thinking about you. I froze. Like physically. My brain just stalled. I remember staring at the screen, hoping I misread it or that it was meant for someone else. But it was her phone. Her lock screen. Her reality. And then another message came in. Miss your body already. That's when my chest dropped. That exact feeling. Like your stomach just disappears and your body goes cold all at once. I wish I could say I handled it calmly, but I didn't. My hands were shaking as I picked up her phone. And yeah, I unlocked it. Before anyone jumps on me, I knew her passcode. We always shared that stuff. Or at least, we used to. The messages were still open. Scrolling up felt like digging my own grave, but I couldn't stop. There were weeks of conversations. Flirting, inside jokes, explicit stuff, plans. Actual plans. And not just one time. Multiple meetups. Late. Work nights. Girls' dinners. All of it was right there, spelled out in a way that made it impossible to deny. What really messed me up, though, she wasn't just lying to me. She was mocking me. There were messages where she joked about how clueless I was. How easy it was to keep me calm if I started asking questions. Even a message where she said, "He thinks I'm loyal, lol." I felt sick. Like genuinely nauseous. I heard the bathroom door open and panicked. I locked the phone and put it back exactly where it was. Then I just stood there, trying to act normal, while my entire world was collapsing in real time. She walked out like nothing happened, smiled at me, asked what I wanted for dinner. And in that moment, I realized something even worse than the cheating. She had no idea I knew. And I had no idea what I was about to do next. I didn't confront her right away. And yeah, maybe that makes me look weak, but I needed time to process what I'd just seen. It's one thing to suspect something. It's another to have it laid out in front of you like a damn script. So I played along. For the next couple of days, I acted normal. Ate dinner with her, watched shows, even laughed at something she said at one point, which felt surreal, like I was watching myself from the outside. But internally, I was spiraling. Every little thing she did suddenly had a different meaning. When she smiled at her phone, I knew why. When she said she was tired and turned away in bed, I knew it wasn't because of work. When she mentioned staying late at the office again, I didn't even ask questions anymore. I already knew the answers. The worst part was how convincing she was. She'd look me dead in the eyes and lie without hesitation. Casual. Effortless. Like breathing. At one point, I even tested it. I asked her, "Hey, are we okay? You've seemed a bit distant lately." She didn't miss a beat. She rolled her eyes and said, "Seriously? I'm just stressed. Not everything is about you." Then she leaned over, kissed me, and added, "Stop overthinking." That kiss. I don't even know how to explain it. It didn't feel like affection anymore. It felt like manipulation. Like she was reinforcing a version of reality where I was the problem. And the messed up thing? Part of me still wanted to believe her. That's what 6 years of marriage does to you. It wires you to trust, even when the evidence is screaming the opposite. But I couldn't unsee those messages. So I started paying closer attention. Not obsessively, but enough to confirm what I already knew. She had patterns. Specific nights she'd go out. Specific excuses she reused. Even specific outfits she'd wear when she said she was just meeting coworkers. And yeah, I did something else I'm not proud of. A few days later, when she left her laptop open, I checked it too. Same guy. Different platform. Even more proof. Photos. Messages. Details I wish I could erase from my brain. That's when it stopped being a question. It wasn't, "Is she cheating?" It was, "How long has this been going on? And how far has it gone?" And more importantly, why the hell was she still acting like everything between us was completely normal? At that point, I knew a confrontation was coming. I just didn't realize how ugly it was about to get. The confrontation didn't happen the way I planned. Actually, I didn't really have a plan. I kept telling myself I'd sit her down, stay calm, lay out the facts, and just handle it like an adult. Yeah. That didn't happen. It blew up. 3 nights after I checked her laptop, she told me she had a team dinner. Same tone, same casual delivery, like she'd said it 100 times before. Which now I knew she probably had. But this time, something in me snapped. I just looked at her and said, "With him?" Silence. Not confusion. Not, "What are you talking about?" Just silence. And that was the moment I knew she knew. Her face changed for a split second, like a crack in a mask, but then it was gone. She crossed her arms and went straight on the defensive. "What are you implying?" she said, sharp as ever. That tone. God, that tone. I felt my heart pounding, but I pushed through it. "I'm not implying anything. I saw the messages. Another pause. Shorter this time. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "Wow," she said, shaking her head. "So now you're going through my phone? That's insane." I remember just staring at her like, "Are you serious right now?" I said, "Don't do that. Don't flip this on me. I know about him." And instead of denying it, she doubled down. "You think you know something," she snapped. "You always overreact and twist things." It was surreal. I was standing there with literal proof burned into my brain, and she was still trying to gaslight me like I had imagined the whole thing. So I got specific. I mentioned the messages, the dates, the late nights. Even quoted one of the texts. That's when her expression shifted again, but this time, it wasn't panic. It was irritation. Like I was inconveniencing her. She sighed, rolled her eyes, and said, "Fine. Yes. I've been seeing someone. Happy now?" No remorse. No hesitation. Just annoyance. That hit harder than the cheating itself. I asked her how long. She shrugged. "A few months." I knew that was a lie. I had seen enough to know it went back further. But the way she said it, so dismissive, made my blood boil. So I pushed again. "Why?" And this is the part that still messes with my head. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Because you're boring." Just like that. 6 years of marriage, and that's what it came down to. I don't even remember what I said immediately after that. Everything blurred together. Anger, disbelief, this overwhelming sense that I was talking to a completely different person than the one I thought I married. But the argument didn't end there. Not even close. It got worse. I wish I could say I walked away right then. That I had some moment of clarity, grabbed my dignity, and left. But no. I stayed. And the argument just kept escalating. After she said I was boring, something in me just cracked. Not explosive anger at first, more like this deep, hollow disbelief. I asked her, "So instead of talking to me, you just cheated?" She let out this annoyed sigh like I was asking something stupid. "I tried talking to you. You just don't get it. You're predictable. Safe. It's like living the same day over and over." That word again, safe. She said it like it was an insult. I told her, that's what marriage is supposed to be. Stability. Trust. And she actually smirked. "Yeah, well, maybe that's your version of life. Not mine." That's when the anger hit. I started raising my voice, asking her if any of this, us, meant anything to her. If she ever planned on telling me. If she was going to keep lying forever. And instead of answering like a normal person, she attacked. "You're acting like a victim," she snapped. "Maybe if you weren't so emotionally needy, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." That one landed hard. I'm not an overly emotional guy. If anything, I've always been the calm one, the one trying to de-escalate things when she'd go off. But suddenly, in her version of reality, I was the problem. Again. I said, "So this is my fault now?" She shrugged. "Partially? Yeah. I don't think I've ever felt that kind of anger before. Not just because she cheated, but because she was rewriting the entire relationship like I was some kind of burden she had to escape from. And then she dropped another bomb. "I didn't even mean for it to get serious," she said. "It just happened." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was that kind of bitter, empty laugh. "Yeah," I said. "Multiple times. Planned meetups. That just happened." She rolled her eyes again, like I was the one being dramatic. Then I asked her the question I probably shouldn't have. "Do you love him?" And for the first time during that whole conversation, she hesitated. Just for a second. But I saw it. And that was enough. She didn't even need to answer. That tiny pause said more than anything she could have said out loud. I felt something shift inside me right then. Not anger this time. Something colder. Like a realization. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just a rough patch. This was something deeper. Something already broken long before I found out. And I started to understand that whatever came next, there was no going back to what we had before. After that pause, something in me just shut off. Not completely, but enough that I stopped trying to reach her. Up until that moment, I think some part of me still believed there was something left to save. That if she showed even a little regret, a little honesty, maybe we could figure it out. But she didn't. Instead, she grabbed her phone, like the conversation was already over, and said, "I'm not doing this all night. I'm going out." I just stared at her. "You're seriously leaving right now?" She shrugged, already halfway out of the argument mentally. "Yeah. I need air. And honestly, I don't owe you a play-by-play of my life." That line, after everything I just found out, it was surreal. I said, "You cheated on me." Repeatedly. "And you think you don't owe me anything?" She turned back, clearly irritated now. "I said I didn't plan for it to happen like this. What do you want me to do? Beg for forgiveness? Cry? That's not me." And the way she said it, it wasn't defensive. It was almost proud. Like showing remorse would make her weak. I asked her, "Are you even sorry?" And she didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, like she was weighing whether the question even deserved a response. Then she said, flat out, "I'm sorry you found out like this." Not, "I'm sorry I hurt you." Not, "I regret what I did." Just sorry I caught her. That's when whatever hope I had left pretty much died. I didn't yell after that. I didn't argue. I didn't try to convince her of anything. I just said, "Go." And she did. No hesitation. No looking back. Just grabbed her bag and walked out like it was any other night. The door closed, and the apartment went completely silent. And that silence hit harder than anything she said. I remember sitting down on the couch and just staring at nothing. My mind kept replaying everything. Her words, the messages, that pause when I asked if she loved him. It all started connecting in ways I didn't want it to. The late nights. The distance. The lies that suddenly weren't small anymore. I don't even know how long I sat there. Hours, probably. At some point, the anger faded, and something else took its place. This heavy, crushing sadness. Because it finally sank in, not just that she cheated, but that the person I thought she was might not have ever really existed. And that realization messed me up more than anything else. That night was the longest night of my life. She didn't come home. No text. No call. Nothing. At first, I kept checking my phone like an idiot, thinking maybe she'd reach out. Say something. Explain, apologize, anything. But deep down, I already knew she wouldn't. Around 2 a.m., I made a mistake I probably shouldn't have. I called her. It rang a few times, then went to voicemail. I waited a bit, then called again. This time, she picked up. And I wish she hadn't. She sounded annoyed. Not worried. Not guilty. Just irritated that I was interrupting whatever she was doing. "What?" she said. "No, hey." "No, are you okay?" "Just what?" I asked her where she was. She sighed. "Out." "With him?" I asked. A pause. Then, "Does it matter?" That answer hit like a punch to the chest. I said, "Yeah, it matters. You're still my wife." And she just laughed softly, like I said something naive. "Not really," she replied. "Not after tonight." That was the moment it became real. Not just emotionally, but officially mentally. She was already out of the marriage. I asked her if she was planning on coming home. She said, "I don't know. Stop calling me." And then she hung up. Just like that. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like the biggest idiot alive. 6 years of marriage, and that's what it came down to. A 10-second phone call where she couldn't even pretend to care. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every possible thought ran through my head. Was she with him right now? Had she been lying this entire time? Were there others before him? You start questioning everything. Even the good memories start to feel fake. Like you were the only one actually living in them. By morning, I felt completely drained. Not even angry anymore, just empty. She came home around 9 a.m. Walked in like nothing happened. No apology. No explanation. Not even eye contact at first. Just kicked off her shoes, put her bag down, and headed toward the kitchen like it was a normal morning. I remember thinking, this can't be real. I asked her, "So that's it? You're just going to act like nothing happened?" She looked at me, annoyed again, and said, "What do you want me to say?" That question, it broke something in me all over again. Because at that point, I realized she wasn't confused. She wasn't conflicted. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. She just didn't care. And that's when the emotional weight really started to hit me in a different way. Not just shock. Not just anger. But this deep, sinking feeling that I had completely lost her a long time ago. And I was the last one to realize it. After she said, "What do you want me to say?" I didn't have an answer. Because honestly, at that point, there was nothing she could say that would fix any of it. Still, I tried. I told her, "Start with the truth. For once." She rolled her eyes, again, and leaned against the counter like this was just another inconvenient conversation she had to get through. "Fine," she said. "What do you want to know?" The way she said it, like I was conducting some kind of interview instead of talking to my wife about destroying our marriage. I asked her when it started. She gave me a vague answer. "A while ago." I pushed for specifics. She got irritated. "Why does the exact date matter?" Because it does. Because every extra week, every extra month means more lies, more nights I trusted her while she was somewhere else. Eventually, she admitted it had been going on for almost a year. A year. That hit differently then. A few months. It meant this wasn't some recent mistake. It was a whole parallel life. I asked her if there were others before him. She hesitated, then said, "No." And the thing is, I didn't believe her. Not anymore. Not after everything. So I asked her the harder question. "Are you still seeing him?" She didn't even hesitate this time. "Yes." No shame. No attempt to soften it. Just yes. I felt my jaw tighten. "So what? You're just going to keep doing that while we're married?" She shrugged. "I'm not going to pretend something is working when it's not." That's when I realized something important. In her mind, she wasn't the villain. She had already rewritten the story so that this was justified. Necessary even. I said, "Then why are you still here? Why not just leave?" And her answer? "Because it's not that simple." Of course it wasn't. We had a shared apartment, shared finances, years of history. Untangling that isn't something you do overnight. But hearing her say it like that, like I was just part of some logistical inconvenience, it hurt more than I expected. I asked her if she was planning to leave me. She paused again. And this time, the answer was worse than anything else she'd said so far. "I don't know." That, "I don't know," felt like being stuck in limbo. Like she wanted to keep both options open, me as the safe backup, him as the excitement. And suddenly, everything made sense. The lies, the distance, the attitude. She wasn't choosing between us. She was keeping both. And I was the one letting it happen. That realization hit hard. Because for the first time since all of this started, I stopped focusing on what she was doing and started thinking about what I was going to do next. That shift in my mindset, it was subtle, but it changed everything. Up until then, every question I asked, every reaction I had, it was all centered around her. What she did, why she did it, whether she'd stop, whether we could fix it. But after that, I don't know, something clicked. I realized I was basically standing there, waiting for someone who had already checked out to decide my future for me. And that felt pathetic. I hate using that word about myself, but that's exactly how it felt in that moment. So I stopped asking her questions. Mid-conversation, she was still talking, something about how things have been off for a while, and how she needed space to figure things out. And I just tuned out, because it didn't matter anymore. All of it sounded like excuses. Clean, rehearsed, emotionless excuses to justify something she chose to do over and over again. I interrupted her and said, "I'm not doing this." She frowned. "Doing what?" "This, waiting around while you decide if I'm worth staying with." She rolled her eyes again, like I was being dramatic. "I never said that." I just looked at her. "You didn't have to." There was this tension in the room, but for the first time since everything blew up, I felt calm. Not happy. Not okay. Just clear. I told her, "You don't get to have both. You don't get to keep me here while you're out there with him." She crossed her arms. "So what? You're giving me an ultimatum now?" I shook my head. "No. I'm making a decision." That caught her off guard. I think up until that point, she assumed I'd keep chasing answers, keep trying to fix things, keep reacting. But I didn't. I said, "I'm done." And for the first time during all of this, she didn't have an immediate comeback. She just stared at me. Not emotional. Not even angry. Just surprised. Like she didn't expect me to actually reach that point. She asked, "You're serious?" I nodded. "Yeah." There was a long silence after that. And then, instead of arguing or trying to stop me, she said something that honestly made my stomach turn. "Okay." Just okay. No fight. No. Wait. No. Let's talk about this. Just acceptance. Like I had just confirmed something she was already prepared for. And in that moment, I realized something else that hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. She had already imagined this ending. Maybe even planned for it. And I was just now catching up. After that, something in me started to shift again, but this time it wasn't toward her. It was toward reality. Because once you start questioning whether your whole marriage was even real, you can't unthink it. You start replaying everything. First dates, anniversaries, vacations, and suddenly even the good memories feel contaminated. I hated that feeling. So I stopped trying to analyze her and started focusing on logistics. I called a lawyer just to understand what my options were. Not because I was ready for anything dramatic that day, but because I needed to stop feeling like I was drifting. That alone gave me a weird sense of control I hadn't felt in days. When she noticed I was more distant, she didn't ask what was wrong. She just said, "You're being cold now." Like that was the issue. Not the cheating. Not the lies. Not the fact she was still actively seeing someone else. Just my tone. I remember laughing a little at that. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. I said, "Cold? You're literally in another relationship while living here." She didn't even look up from her phone. "We already talked about this," she said. And that was it. That phrase again, like talking once somehow erased consequences. A couple of days later, I got home earlier than usual and heard her on a call in the kitchen. I didn't mean to listen, but I froze when I heard her say his name. She was laughing. Not the polite kind of laugh she used to do with me lately, but real laughter. Light. Effortless. And then she said something that stuck in my head long after. Yeah, it's just complicated at home right now, but I'll sort it out soon. Sort it out? Like I was an inconvenience in her way. Like I was just temporary noise between her and him. I walked away before she noticed me. That was the first time I realized something important. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was just managing timing. And I was no longer part of her emotional equation, just part of her living situation. That night, I sat in the spare room and made a decision. Not emotional. Not reactive. Just clear. I wasn't going to wait for her to figure things out anymore. Because she already had. And I was done being the afterthought in someone else's story. The next step wasn't dramatic. No big argument. No final explosion. Just quiet preparation. I started separating things properly. Documents, finances, shared accounts. Not in a chaotic panic, but slowly, carefully, like I was finally waking up from something I'd been stuck in too long. The strangest part was how normal she kept acting through it. One morning, I was sorting through some paperwork at the table, and she walked in, made coffee, and said, "You're really going through with all that legal stuff?" Like she was commenting on the weather. I looked up and said, "Yes." She nodded once. Okay. That was it. No attempt to stop me. No apology. No panic. Just acceptance again. And somehow, that hurt less than it should have, because by then, I already understood what that meant. She didn't see me as something she was losing. She saw me as something she was finishing. Later that week, I came home and found her dressed up, more than usual. Hair done, makeup, that familiar, going out, energy. I didn't even need to ask. She said it first. I'm meeting him. No hesitation. No shame. I just nodded. All right. That actually surprised her a little. She paused at the door and looked at me. That's all you're going to say? I thought about it for a second and said, what do you want me to say? For a moment, I saw something flicker in her expression, like she was expecting anger, maybe even begging, something emotional. But I had nothing left to give her in that way. So she just left. And I stood there realizing something important. The version of me that used to fight for this relationship was gone. Not because I stopped caring overnight, but because I finally understood I was the only one still fighting it all. That night, I didn't wait up. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder where she was. Instead, I sat down and started planning my exit properly, timeline, living arrangements, everything. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. Because even though it hurt like hell to accept it, I was finally stepping out of something that had stopped being a marriage long before I admitted it. The next few days felt like living in a house with a stranger. We barely spoke. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything between us had already been said in the worst possible way. She moved around the apartment like I wasn't really there. Morning routines, coffee, phone calls, normal life, just without me in it. And the weirdest part? She seemed fine. Not happy. Not sad. Just unaffected. Meanwhile, I was going through every stage of grief in random order. Anger 1 hour, emptiness the next, then this strange denial where I'd catch myself thinking, maybe this is fixable, before reality snapped back in. One evening, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I asked her, "Are you staying here or not? Because this in-between thing is killing me." She looked up from her phone, annoyed at being interrupted. I told you, she said. I'm figuring things out. That phrase again. Figuring things out. Like my life was just something she could pause while she explored whatever else she wanted. I said, you're still seeing him, but you're also still here. That's not figuring things out. That's just keeping me on hold. She sighed. Why do you need to label everything? It's not that deep. That sentence actually stunned me. Not because it was insulting, but because of how casually she dismissed it. Like I was overcomplicating something simple. So I asked her directly, do you even feel guilty at all? She finally looked at me properly. And for a second, I thought I saw something flicker in her expression. But then she said, guilt doesn't really help anyone. That was it. No denial. No remorse. Just emotional detachment dressed up as philosophy. I stood there for a moment, trying to process it. And then I realized something that made my stomach drop again. She had already separated herself emotionally from all of this a long time ago. Probably before I even found out. Which meant I wasn't dealing with someone who was confused or lost. I was dealing with someone who had already moved on internally and was just managing the fallout externally. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I missed her, but because I kept replaying every moment I didn't see it sooner. Every excuse I accepted. Every time I chose trust over instinct. And the worst thought of all kept coming back. If she was capable of living a double life for that long, how much of our entire marriage had actually been real? That question didn't leave me. It just stayed there, growing louder in the silence. After that night, something in me started to shift again, but this time it wasn't toward her. It was toward reality. Because once you start questioning whether your whole marriage was even real, you can't unthink it. You start replaying everything. First dates, anniversaries, vacations, and suddenly even the good memories feel contaminated. I hated that feeling. So I stopped trying to analyze her and started focusing on logistics. I called a lawyer just to understand what my options were. Not because I was ready for anything dramatic that day, but because I needed to stop feeling like I was drifting. That alone gave me a weird sense of control I hadn't felt in days. When she noticed I was more distant, she didn't ask what was wrong. She just said, "You're being cold now." Like that was the issue. Not the cheating. Not the lies. Not the fact she was still actively seeing someone else. Just my tone. I remember laughing a little at that. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. I said, "Cold? You're literally in another relationship while living here." She didn't even look up from her phone. "We already talked about this," she said. And that was it. That phrase again, like talking once somehow erased consequences. A couple of days later, I got home earlier than usual and heard her on a call in the kitchen. I didn't mean to listen, but I froze when I heard her say his name. She was laughing. Not the polite kind of laugh she used to do with me lately, but real laughter. Light. Effortless. And then she said something that stuck in my head long after. "Yeah, it's just complicated at home right now, but I'll sort it out soon." Sort it out? Like I was an inconvenience in her way. Like I was just temporary noise between her and him. I walked away before she noticed me. That was the first time I realized something important. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was just managing timing. And I was no longer part of her emotional equation, just part of her living situation. The next step wasn't dramatic. No big argument. No final explosion. Just quiet preparation. I started separating things properly. Documents, finances, shared accounts. Not in a chaotic panic, but slowly, carefully, like I was finally waking up from something I'd been stuck in too long. The strangest part was how normal she kept acting through it. One morning, I was sorting through some paperwork at the table, and she walked in, made coffee, and said, "You're really going through with all that legal stuff?" Like she was commenting on the weather. I looked up and said, "Yes." She nodded once. "Okay." That was it. No attempt to stop me. No apology. No panic. Just acceptance again. And somehow, that hurt less than it should have, because by then, I already understood what that meant. She didn't see me as something she was losing. She saw me as something she was finishing. Later that week, I came home and found her dressed up, more than usual. Hair done, makeup, that familiar, going out energy. I didn't even need to ask. She said it first. "I'm meeting him." No hesitation. No shame. I just nodded. "All right." That actually surprised her a little. She paused at the door and looked at me. "That's all you're going to say?" I thought about it for a second and said, "What do you want me to say?" For a moment, I saw something flicker in her expression, like she was expecting anger, maybe even begging, something emotional. But I had nothing left to give her in that way. So she just left. And I stood there realizing something important. The version of me that used to fight for this relationship was gone. Not because I stopped caring overnight, but because I finally understood I was the only one still fighting at all. That night, I didn't wait up. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder where she was. Instead, I sat down and started planning my exit properly, timeline, living arrangements, everything. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. Because even though it hurt like hell to accept it, I was finally stepping out of something that had stopped being a marriage long before I admitted it. The days after she moved out were quieter than I expected. No dramatic aftermath. No sudden emotional breakdown from her side. She just came packed and left like she was closing a chapter she'd already finished reading months ago. And I stayed in that apartment alone. At first, the silence was brutal. Every corner had reminders, small things that suddenly felt too loud in their absence. Her coffee mug still in the cupboard. A random hair tie under the couch. The ghost of routines that no longer existed. But slowly, something started to change. The silence stopped feeling like emptiness and started feeling like space. Real space. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without constantly analyzing someone else's mood, lies, or distance. No more guessing games. No more walking on emotional eggshells. No more rewriting reality just to keep the peace. I filed the papers a week later. She didn't contest anything. She didn't even really react. Just signed where needed and moved on. That part hurt in a weird